right, so welcome to our session, Thriving as a Young Leader. This is our second series of our MYL alumni talks that we are trying to have on a monthly basis just to share alumni wisdom with our greater community. So really grateful for everyone for being here tonight. So a quick agenda, we'll just do a few minutes of framing, grounding us in our agenda for tonight. We'll invite Adrianna and Casey to share a little bit about their leadership journeys. We'll give folks a chance to set their own vision for what they want to be true for them as young leaders, and then we'll wrap up. So objectives for tonight are that our participants can articulate a vision for their own youth leadership, and they can gain inspiration and knowledge of leadership strategies from alumni, Casey and Adrianna. So just would love to invite everyone to introduce themselves, your name, your MYL connection, if there is one, and what brings you to this session tonight. I can start. My name is Sam Curtis. I did the MassSTAR conference in 2006, so it's been a while, but I've stayed involved just because of this great community, and it's always a source of inspiration for me to be, in service with my community. So throughout the years, I've stayed involved for that reason, and I am in the session tonight just to bring the wisdom of our greater community to our younger alums, because this is something they expressed wanting, like just a space to talk about the challenges of being a young leader. So I invite anyone who'd like to jump in next.
I'm happy to hop in. Hi, everyone. My name's Adrianna Boulin. I use the pronouns she and her, and had the opportunity to join the 2007, so right after Sam, conference for MassSTAR. And I stayed pretty involved in the beginning on the board and went to several conferences. And I'm just so happy to be here with you all to have this conversation, and so glad that it was something that's been pursued. So excited to connect more with you all.
I can go. I'm Olivia. I use the pronoun she, her. I went to the conference in 2016, so I am a little bit on the younger side. Christian likes to make fun of me. So I've stayed very involved since. I'm currently serving as the vice president of the board. And I actually, because I'm a little bit on the younger side and in this position on the board, I'm actually really interested to meet both of you guys, see what kind of insights you have. I often struggle balancing and stressing about how others see me as a young person, but being in this position of, authority or organization. And so I'm really interested to hear what you guys have to say, actually. I love all of our programming, but this one specifically, I feel like kind of calls to me. So thank you guys for sharing your wisdom in advance.
I'll go. So my name is Christian Bedoya. I use the pronouns he, him. So I'm currently the president of the Massachusetts Youth Leadership Foundation, but I went back to the conference. I went to the conference back in 2008. It's been a couple of years. Just been involved ever since, kind of been loving the organization. I love what we're trying to do for the youth of Massachusetts and beyond. And so I'm particularly interested, this particular topic, it's something that even I've struggled way back, in the past few years, and even in some ways still today. So I'm very curious to get your insights and just hear what you have to say. I love anything, new insights from other folks in the organization.
Hi, I'm Dawson. My pronouns are they, them. I'm a 2016 MassSTAR alum. I'm currently one of the programming directors for MassSTAR this year. I'm just here to see what insights y'all have to offer. I'm excited to listen in.
What's up, Dawson? I know Dawson. We graduated from the same school. So my name is Casey Pease, he, him pronouns. I went to the conference in 2013, which means that my 10-year anniversary is only a few weeks away. I didn't even notice that or think about that till this evening. I've been pretty engaged for a long time and super passionate about engaging young people. I haven't necessarily in these last 10 years been as involved with the foundation as maybe I should be and would like to be, but I am very excited to be here and have these conversations with you all.
Thank you so much, everyone. So just to ground us, I'd like to share with you a list of core values and invite everyone to take a look at those core values. You can pull them up. know if, okay, I see folks getting in. And just take a minute or two to think about one or two core values that show up for you as a leader. And I was going to have us write, but maybe since it's a small group, we can do a quick share out. So let's take a minute or two to just kind of quietly think, what are one or two values that show up for you as a leader, especially thinking about being a young leader, and then we'll share out in a minute. If anyone feels like they would like to share, I'd love to open it up. So just one or two values that really resonate with you or that show up for you when thinking about being a young leader.
I think something that jumped out at me, and I almost want to like edit the word for me personally, but so the word compassion, I think I would put empathy rather than compassion. But just for me, like when I have to have a conversation with someone, when I'm trying to, if I maybe disagree with the way they handled a situation, but I need to have a conversation with them about how they can go about it in the future. They're not going to understand where I'm coming from if I don't understand how they logically came to this decision. And so trying to like put myself in the place of others in that situation and try to figure out a way to talk to them that's going to make sense to them of why, having that conversation of why we disagree, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe they're wrong, but at least like being able to picture why they made the decision they did is really important to like be able to have productive conversations for me.
Thank you for sharing that, Olivia. For me, authenticity and humility really stood out. I've been leaning so much into just what is natural to me. I feel less anxious when I do that. I feel more comfortable and sure of myself. And I've realized that when I'm more authentic to who I am. And so I've tried to lean into the energy of authenticity and humility. I love the work that I do. And we'll discuss this more, but I have the opportunity to work with such various intersections of people. And in doing that, we don't know everyone's experience. We don't know who everyone's is, how they best receive information, but moving into a space humbly, respectfully, and just in an open way, in a curious way, is how I would describe that humility. And I like to approach conversations and spaces in that way.
I would have to say probably kindness and service. I've always learned in my life, professionally, personally, like kindness goes such a long way, and it has been one of the ways I've been able to actually gain a lot of opportunity is just by being a good person, by being good to people. And I definitely think that's a big part of like my general leadership style. And then service, I work in politics and now for the government, and to me, it's all about giving back to people, being there for people, and knowing that we all have different things that we contribute and have different ways that we're able to serve each other. And I think those two things are pivotal for me.
It's hard to choose just, one or two. And I was also thinking about self-compassion because I can be really hard on myself. And so for me, being compassionate towards myself and knowing like I'm always learning, always growing, there's no such thing as the right way to do anything, right? There's only trying your best, learning, reflecting. being authentic, as Adriana mentioned, right? So just kind of like looking at it as an evolving process that's always ongoing, and being compassionate towards myself when I don't get it right. Um, or when something doesn't go exactly how I want, or I wish I knew something that I didn't know. So self-compassion is really important for me. Christian or Dawson, if you'd like to share, no pressure at all. We can also use the chat. I saw that Dawson was maybe agreeing with Olivia earlier, possibly.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Olivia. Compassion was the one I was sort of immediately drawn to. I just think it's important to approach sort of everything that we do with compassion, um, and let that shape the way we interact with others.
Yeah, I've been trying to think of I've been looking at these words, and like it's so hard to choose because they all play in a way. For me, definitely I mean I agree with compassion. That is a big one. But just to kind of add a similar word, kindness, just treating everything with kindness really goes a long way. You'll be surprised that just having that as a foundation for everything else you do is really uh, pivotal in everything that you do. And along with service, I've found that through service is kind of an extension of your kindness to those who need it especially. So I'd say those are the two words for me.
Thank you everyone so much for sharing. I just loved starting with values because I feel like there's so many connections as a group, and it really just grounds us in why we're here and what is our why. So with that, I'd love to turn it over to our presenters, Adriana and Casey, and just invite them. We can kind of do panel style, just kind of you two can go back and forth. I would love to just start with, who are you? What's your background, starting from, kind of overview of high school to here? How did you get to where you are, and what are you currently doing professionally?
Casey, would you like to start, or I'm happy to start? Do you have any preference?
No, I'm curious about you, since you were 2006. We'll start in order from, I guess, like that. So please take it away.
Sure. 2007, close.
2007, excuse me, sorry.
No worries. I'm happy to start. So when I think of who I am, I like the words that come to mind are human, Black, queer, Jamaican, a lover. There are probably many more, but those are the immediate ones that come to mind. And a lot of my work centralizes around 4 key things: authenticity. So I love that we started with values, healing, health equity, and community engagement. And recently, I was invited to tell my story, and I was sharing about the work that I do now and how I would describe the work that I do now, both at Fenway Health, which is a community health center that's focused on populations like people who live with HIV, the LGBTQIA plus community, and other marginalized populations like people who use drugs. I was describing the work that I do, which is identifying what people need, what's in the way of them getting what they need with respect to care, and dismantling that barrier. So identifying the barrier and identifying ways to facilitate the dismantling of it. And I realized I've really been doing that my entire life. I remember being younger than I am now. I still consider myself a young person. I'm 32. And I feel like if you ask me in 30 years, I'm going to be saying the same thing. So I feel like when I was a younger person, I felt like there was no connections to things that we were doing. I wanted a story. I wanted to fit in like a puzzle piece. And it really has. When I look back, I always identified what I or my peers or people around me needed, and worked to find out how to address and meet that need, so that we could be well, and be our best selves. And that's what I really think my work has always focused on: how to help people become their best selves. And my influences, my grandmother, who's this person still to this day. If you all have seen Tyler Perry's Medea, or if you just think of that matriarch, older individual in the family who everyone goes to for sugar advice, etc. That's who my grandma is in the community. And so I grew up watching her receive people's needs and identify ways to address them. And that's very much the spirit of how my mom works too. So I think I've embodied and taken that up. So that is really who I am and how I work. And from starting a poetry club at my elementary school, because I realized we needed to be doing more than the activities that we were limited to. So from creating a first club at the school to being really active in middle school and starting programs in high school and attending MassSTAR, and we'll get to those pieces, but just who I am is someone who likes identifying what people need to be their best selves and working to achieve that.
Right, I guess it's my turn, yeah. So my name is Casey Pease. Like I mentioned, I currently serve as the Constituent Service Director for Senator Paul Mark. He's a state senator in Western Massachusetts. But kind of very similar to Adrianna's story, I took a lot from both my grandmother and my mother. They were huge. And now as I'm getting older, which I still feel young, but as I'm getting older, I'm realizing and really understanding how important they were to me. My mother is a kind woman. She's a nurse. And my grandmother had 8 girls, and she always believed in volunteering and serving her community. You know, I grew up in a small rural town. My grandmother was a select woman for 20 years. She was the first woman in that 250 years to serve in that role. And to her, it wasn't a political thing. It was just service to community. And I have tried to live on those values, you know, as best as I can. And growing up being someone who's pretty goofy, who is pretty passionate, you know, those are 2 really big words for me. I have a lot of passion, and you know, I'd see issues going on in the community. I would, you know, when I was real young, we had the Iraq War, and there was just a lot going on politically. Still is, of course. But I always thought, if there's so many problems, why don't we fix them? What can we do to fix them? And you know, I had to learn in my environment growing up in a very small town, going to a regional school of 7 towns. You know, how do I do this when you know, a lot of people around me don't necessarily share the same values or necessarily you know, have that same level of passion or concern with things. So it's been wow, the last 10 years has been really interesting for me. But I think back to how I felt during the conference in 2013, and I still feel those same things. MassSTAR was, and I'm not just saying it because I'm on the panel, but MassSTAR was a huge thing for me. And Sam, you probably remember, like for me, that was one of the most profound moments, at least certainly at that time, for me, because it really gave me drive and direction and solidified that, you know what, I can do things. You know, I have the ability to be a change agent. And the last 10 years has just been navigating that and how I can do that to the best of my ability, which I'm still learning to do. Constant process.
I'm like writing down everything you both are all saying, because I'm like, this is such good reflections, and you know, just to be able to share this with future delegates, it's just so powerful. So thank you both for sharing so openly. So what are some challenge, or actually we'll start with this, what are some opportunities that you've had to develop as a young leader?
Totally, MassSTAR. And Casey, something that you just mentioned sparked to me how empowering the MassSTAR conference and just being a part of the Mass Youth Leadership Board and supporting planning the conference was for me. There were so many responsibilities, and I was so trusted to do things I didn't even trust myself. I was like, I can determine this, or this is what I can work on. The MassSTAR was so empowering for me. yeah, I'm sitting with that right now. It did so much for empowering me as an individual. And something that I do in my work now is think a lot about accessibility. And it's one thing to offer something or to make something available to someone or individuals. It's another thing for an individual or those people to feel empowered to access what you're making available. And just thinking about different leadership opportunities or pursuing different initiatives, sometimes it's hard to see that you can do it. And there were people that were mentoring us at MassSTAR and the board that were saying, you can do it, and we're looking to you to do this. And it really, it was so empowering. And it was also such a compassionate space. I didn't know what I was doing, so I was messing up and, maybe not reaching out in the fastest time with things. And there was so much compassion and understanding, which was so helpful for me, because when there are environments of shame, I don't really learn very well, and it's discouraging. And I never experienced that. I just felt like the colleagues, friends, and peers that we were all working with was just like, we'll do this, we'll pick it up, we'll support each other. One day you're down, next day you're up, I'm down. So it was just such a collaborative space. And I'll say one more thing, and then I'll stop talking, is I really learned how to work on a team. Being a part of MassSTAR, one as a delegate, just because the way the conference is built and just how we connect and collaborate, it inspires teamwork and collaboration and how to be thoughtful and intentional about connecting with each other. And then from the planning perspective, and as an alumni, you're doing that even more at a time where us as individuals are developing. We're continuing to become juniors and seniors. We're thinking about what we want to do after we graduate high school. And so it was such a place of collaboration, and it really, I was prepared when I went to college and wanted to be on every board and organization. I went there with so much tools and also connections. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the empowerment piece is so big for me because after MassSTAR, it was just like this rush of energy and excitement and feeling like there wasn't a limit anymore. Now, I can go and do things. And at my high school, we started a Model United Nations Club. Like we started, I say we because my peers, like I came back and I was like, guys, whoa, and just went out and started doing things and kind of put myself out there. Like, if you know me and you know my personality, like I'm not afraid to be a little bit out there, but it really, the opportunity came by just doing and not necessarily knowing, is this the right way or who to go to or what organization to get involved with, but just putting myself out there and saying, hey, I want to do this. I think this needs to happen, or we need to change this in the school. And then when I went to UMass, when I got to college, I spent more time doing extracurriculars than I really did in the classroom. And another opportunity that happened was started college in the fall of 2015. And at that time, there were a bunch of presidential campaigns that were starting up, and me being really into politics and kind of a nerd, I started organizing for the candidate that I was supporting, and like just kind of figured it out as I went, found other people that shared that interest and excitement, and ultimately that actually allowed for an opportunity to work on the presidential campaign, which was at the time was Bernie Sanders in 2016. And it was just like a snowball effect. MassSTAR led to one thing, which led to another thing, which brought with me connections and support from my peers, and that drove more and more opportunity for me. And, having, in my situation, at home, I grew up in a very conservative and strict family. And so being kind of outgoing and goofy, I hid a lot of that. But MassSTAR allowed me to kind of break that barrier. And once I did, it was like there's no stopping. This is who I am, and I had a confidence in that. And certainly have had many challenges and made many mistakes, but I think when you go at things with positivity, with kindness, with some of these values that we're talking about, you learn that you're gonna have challenges, you're gonna make mistakes, there are gonna be times when you're feeling down, but if you're able to bring it back to those core values, you opportunities and life will continue to present itself in really great ways.
And that's a great segue on to the next question, which is just what are some challenges that have come up for you as a young leader? I know some of the participants shared questions ahead of time of like, how do you overcome doubt, right? So when you doubt yourself as a young leader, how do you respectfully deal with people who are older than you and might not respect you for one of your identities? But just in general, how do you deal with the challenges of being a young leader?
So I think there are a lot of things that can come with being a young leader. Something that's in my mind right now is the self-doubt and talk. And that could come from, or that has come from for me, just from my own fear, I want to do well. And I'm wondering, am I going to do well? And it could also be from the voices of others. It could be from people who have more power or more privilege than I do. And because they're saying something, that's influencing how I'm feeling. But the self-talk is something that I've had to work on with myself, because I realized I was beating myself up at times, and it was in the name of discipline and like focus. And that wasn't what I was doing. I was being critical on myself. So if the world was being critical, I was receiving that and I was like doubling it up on myself. And it's hard for me to thrive in that way. And I feel really crippled and I can't really do anything. And so knowing that that's the impact that negative self-talk and focus on negative self-talk that might come outside from the world impacts me, I really focus on positivity, or say I'll focus on alignment, because life happens and we can't always be positive. And I think we should, like, when that happens, I think we should be real about it, and find ways that work for us to work through those feelings. I think it's important to feel your feelings, but when something isn't in alignment, for me, I try and find ways to find that alignment. So whether it's having my goals, I'm looking around me right now, I realized that I needed to remind myself more of my needs and my why. So I have it posted in front of me. I'm looking at it right now and I have it up in different places. I also, sometimes when I'm thinking about a lot of things, I can get caught in a web, and I realize this can happen like midday or an hour or two before the workday is over. So I have alarms at different parts of the day that remind me to take a moment of ease. So 3 times a day it goes off. Sometimes I'm in meeting with folks and I still let it go off and I let them know I just need to take a moment, and that's just my boundaries. So I'm understanding, oh, thank you, Christian. I'm understanding who I am more, what happens when I experience things and how to navigate that. So moment of ease. So just really understanding how to master and nurture what my being needs.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that idea. And it's cool that you do that and learn to do that. For me, like, honestly, the biggest challenge, especially being a youth leader, and I was in 2018, I ran for state representative when I was 20. And at the time, I was the youngest person in the whole state that was running, and it was like this moment of really, really putting myself out there, putting myself in the public eye, and balancing those expectations, right? And Olivia, I think you had mentioned, this is a question for you or something that you're trying to figure out. Like, we live in a world that's crazy and it's changing every day. With social media and mainstream media, like, we now have more access to each other, at least in that way. And it can make it really difficult when you're not none of us are perfect people. As much as we'd like to be and want to be, we're not. And so when we have these expectations as a young person, really trying to be involved, and you're trying to make a difference, and you want to make your peers proud and your family and your community proud, that could be a lot. That's a lot of pressure, especially when you are still growing and learning who you are and trying to figure out what you want to do. And that was the hardest thing for me. Like, when I got out of high school and into college, I thought I had it all like figured out. I was like, okay, I'm gonna run for office, like I'm gonna change the world, like it's gonna be so awesome. Like I thought I had everything figured out. And then life, you get older, you grow, you learn more about yourself and the world. And I realized that I had been putting so much of myself out there that it really wasn't allowing me that time to grow, and to really understand who I was. And there was a few years where I had to take a big step back, after I ran for office, which was an incredible experience. And I was so glad I did it, even though I ended up losing. But it was, in my mind, it was still such a win. I was in a tough financial situation, and I took a job that, frankly, was paid the bills. It did what it needed to do for me at that time, but it also gave me a minute to sort of get out of the limelight, to take a step back, and to, again, like just grow and make some of these mistakes without fear of retribution or what have you. And that's a tough thing to do nowadays. I think so many people, especially young people, struggle with this, because of just the way that we interact nowadays with TikTok and all these different things. And you just have to know that, first of all, they say this all the time, but you got to do you first, and realize that at the end of the day, it's okay if you're not always 100%, you're not always out there. It's okay to take a step back, and it's okay if you disappoint someone, because that's just life. Like, that's going to happen, but you have to be able to know that it's okay, I guess. And that can be a difficult thing, and it's something that I've learned a lot more in the last few years. I'm about to be 26, and it took time to figure this out, but that's definitely probably been one of the biggest challenge for me.
Thank you so much for both of you for all your honesty. That's real. We're all growing every day, right? And it's a process. I feel that's when I was thinking of my value of compassion, like everything you're saying, Casey, I feel that of just wanting to solve all the problems and be there for everyone. And like Adrianna was saying, be that person who can take care of everyone around you. But the reality is we're human, and there's so many hours in a day, and we have, only so many things we can do at a time. So I really appreciate that humility that you've shared. So what would be one or two tips you would give us for if we're working with people who are older than us, if we feel like we're in these situations where things are tricky? What are one or two quick tips you could give us for being an effective young leader? And I know you both have already kind of hinted around at many of them, so maybe you just want to say them again if those would be your takeaways.
Something that I'll share that I've been thinking about and navigating lately is I've noticed the colleagues that I work closely with now, who I don't supervise, but who I collaborate with, are much older than me. And I've been navigating this feeling of like them being my supervisor, but they're not my supervisor because we're like on the same level, so to speak. And so I've tried to deconstruct or understand, like, okay, how can we break this up? Like, because individuals are also not presenting themselves in a, what's the word? Like a way, like, I don't think these individuals or the examples I'm pulling from are doing anything to make me feel this way. I think there's a filter that I'm looking through, or a filter that I'm seeing and experiencing them, that is, at least for me, that is bringing me to feel this way. So what I've done is to build relationships with people. Like, I've just said, hey, can we hop on Zoom, or can we go for a walk or go for lunch? And I want to learn about something. Tell me your favorite color, or like, what you do to de-stress. And having those human connections really helps. It helps, because whatever filter I'm looking through that makes me feel like it's difficult or a challenge to work with someone who's older, or but at the same level, that gets broken down, and I see them as a human being. So that's definitely something I would recommend: building relationships, genuine relationships.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Relationships are just so important. I think, I don't know, like, some of the best tips, or some tips I could give, is learning how to be adaptable and scrappy. Like, I've sort of navigated different things, not necessarily knowing like what to do. Like, when I first got involved politically, there was no real handbook to say, like, these are the things that you need to do. Especially like, my parents, they didn't have any political background. My grandmother was a select woman, but that was for a small town. It really wasn't very political. So it was trying to just learn things as I go, and be a little bit scrappy, and try to figure things out. And when I took a little bit of a break from the political world, I had a job where I was working in health and safety for a utility company. It was a totally different thing. And I was dealing with a lot of blue collar individuals that, if they had known my background, would probably judge me or see me in a little bit different light. And so I had to sort of, adapt and figure out, okay, how, as a young person in this position, like, how do I, navigate myself, and what do I need to do? And it just was a willingness to, again, just be adaptable. Like, there are constantly changing environments and things that happen, and you learn from them, and you find, what works and what doesn't work. But if you're coming at it with, it's okay if things don't go the way that you thought they were going to go, and that you can kind of move on from that. And that, to me, has just been so helpful. I've worked in health and safety, in politics. I've worked in hospitality, all dealing with people. And I found that, people, more or less, we're a lot more similar, I think, than we give ourselves credit to. And if you're able to be adaptable in your different environments, not changing your values, that doesn't mean, changing what you believe in, but changing how maybe you would navigate a certain situation. I think that can be really helpful for you.
So much wisdom between the two of you. So grateful for everything y'all have shared. So I got to ask a lot of questions. So I want to ask anyone else on the call, if they have a question, they can type it, or come off mute. If not, we can move on, but wanted to make sure I gave folks a chance.
Also, Adriana, your background is like so light and happy, like greenery. Like, I don't know, whatever you got going on, it's nice.
So much. It's my grass wall.
Love that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I also do. It's really cool.
Thank you. And I was going to say, added to, while folks are thinking, or before we move on, I was thinking about just working with, the question that we were discussing. And I also am the president of Boston Pride for the People, the organization who is leading the yearly Pride Parade and Festival. And I remember when our group is so diverse, racially, age, ability, just, I've never been a part of such a diverse group of people working together. And what you had said, Casey, about adaptability, somehow we weren't achieving that on Zoom. And one day we went to someone's house and they have this big rectangular table, and we sat there and we got to that place of adaptability. We were sharing snacks. We were occasionally sharing things about ourselves, which I think the relationship building piece is really important. But yeah, adaptability is so important. And at least speaking for myself, it's easier for me to adapt and be flexible when I know someone's intentions. And what helps me know someone's intentions is us building a relationship and getting to know each other outside of the tasks and responsibilities we might have between each other.
Yeah, absolutely love how both of your answers can connect together, right? So I see a few questions coming in question from Dawson. What's an obstacle you've come against and how did you overcome it?
So I'm happy to answer this question. So there's one thing in particular that was really hard for me. So in the couple years when I was working in health and safety, right, it was a total change of pace, new environment for me, different skills, some of which overlapped, but it was different. And I had to figure out how, as a 24-year-old, as a manager with folks who had been in an industry, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, how to be able to be effective in my position and I guess get respect from folks. I think I came in and as a young person, they're like, well, you don't know anything. Like, I'm not going to listen to you and what you have to say. And that was really hard initially, to figure out, how am I going to do this? And I was able to overcome it by, as opposed to, in health and safety, especially in this industry, like people are like, you're the person that sometimes you're not always liked, right? You're telling people this is what you have to do. This is the safe way to do things. And sometimes, you come off as sort of the by the book kind of guy, especially in this kind of field. And so I would ask the employees, I would say, how do you think you can do your job safer? Or teach me to say, you've been doing this for a long time. Like, what are your thoughts? And really just, got myself to their level and did my best to understand their perspective. And I found that even though I was in a managerial role, I was in a role where I had to have, I had a level of authority. I tried to understand the people that I was working with, their perspectives, and that built a relationship, between each other where there was that respect, where they were more comfortable willing to listen to me, even when they might not necessarily want to, because they knew that, I was there for them. And that, I guess, was a huge obstacle, but I near the end, I had great relationships with these folks, and it was because of that mindset and that ability to really to level with folks and really get to understand other people's perspectives, so I can know how to navigate mine.
Yeah, thank you, Casey. Something that came to mind for me was when I was in my sophomore year, after the fall semester, had failed all my classes except one. And I was an RA that time. I lost my RA role, so I was moving from my own room to sharing a room with someone. And what led to that was there was family stuff happening, bio major, and I was taking organic chemistry, which those of you that might be going into that field, I'm prefacing a class that will either be a challenge or a joy for you. But I had a heavy caseload, and I was also navigating an illness called fibromyalgia. It's a chronic fatigue syndrome. And so I just, the semester sucked and I failed. And I had to do, thank you, Olivia. Yeah, Orgo was the worst. Thank you for validating. It was. And I didn't know how I was going to come back from that. I was ashamed. I had to move out of my room. What was I going to tell my parents? I had to stay at school longer. And what helped me overcome that or get through that was acceptance. And by acceptance, I meant I had to accept the fact that this happened. These are the reasons why this happened. And if I'm going to move into the direction that I want to move into, I have to accept that this has happened. Because if I don't, I'm going to continue trying to rationalize it while still trying to navigate it. And that takes a lot of energy. So what acceptance looked like was being in the tutoring session all in the station all the time, being honest with my mom about like where I was at education wise, so that she understood more instead of like getting it told at the last minute. It was going to therapy. It was like making better choices about where I was going and my health. So it just being able to accept the obstacle and the impact of the obstacle really helped me overcome it.
Thank you. Yeah, Casey, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, because in Christian, and I know it's similar, but what was your lowest low in your leadership? And so there's was a period of time where after I ran for office, like, and I had to, figure out like what's my next step? Like, what do I do next? What I want to do next? I was pretty depressed at the time. I wasn't in a really great mental space, and I sort of went from being super in the spotlight to now I didn't want any spotlight. And I think some people who I may have disappointed during that time, I didn't really reach out to a lot of people. Like I sort of just kind of became really closed, and then I decided to take the new job and kind of go a little bit of a different direction. And that was really, really hard for me, because I did feel like I was letting a lot of people down. And then the irony was I did something new for a couple of years. It was able to put me in a good financial situation. My mental health improved. And now I'm back where my real passion is. I'm working in the state Senate, and I needed that. I needed that time. Unfortunately, it happened in a way that wasn't great, but that's also, again, that's life. Like you don't get to choose necessarily these things. And that was a low for me. And since then, I think the lessons I learned in going a different route was so huge. It was so profound for me. So yeah, it was just, Adrianna, you were saying some things that made me think of that. I was like, I gotta bring this up because this is so true.
I want to share something that sprung up for me when you shared that time that you spent away helped so much for where you are now. Having to do an extra year of undergrad, I had the time to realize I didn't want to be a doctor, and I wanted to do what I now see as public health. Because I had to do an extra year, I had the opportunity to do more things. And one of the things that I did was go to Eswatini in South Africa and really understand different health impacts and what people's lives were. And I realized I wanted to do more than be a physician. I wanted to understand what their environment was, their housing, how that addressed their health. And I don't know if I would have had that opportunity if I didn't spend an extra year. So I appreciate you offering that, Casey, because it definitely was something I needed to get to where I am now. It helped me realize something.
I just got goosebumps with the way y'all are like building on each other's stories and leadership journeys. So just so appreciate the way that y'all are building on each other. And I see Christian giving you some shine in the chat as well. So we're nearing the end of our time, but so I don't think we'll break out into breakout rooms, but do want to give folks, if anyone has a specific thing that they're like really wrestling with in their own lives right now that they want to post to the chat, we can do a really quick workshop together and try to put our brains together if there is something that you want to, like a challenge that you're dealing with specifically that you want advice on. I also see Olivia saying, growing up, I was taught that college was supposed to be linear. It's taken me a long time to realize that it's not always serendipity. Totally. Yeah, so if anyone has like a specific challenge that they want to pose in the chat, we don't have to. We can wrap up, but want to give folks that time if there's something they want eyes and ears on.
Well, if
Yeah.
you're still thinking, I just wanted to just say one thing, as we're all figuring out our own professional lives and personal lives and figuring how do we be good youth leaders and what have you, I think one of the most profound things for me to have realized and understand is that we are taught, and that it was Olivia, was your message that made me think of this. We're taught that things are black and white, they're cut and dry, that you're going to go to college, you're going to get a good job, that's just how the world works. And I think we've all realized in the last few years that things aren't black and white. People aren't black and white. There's no right or wrong answer. And we have a perspective of the world that we thought we knew, and we sometimes realize that, oh, this isn't how things have to be. The world around us is constantly changing, and with that, I think brings a lot of opportunity. And I think no matter what you do or how you go about things, just realizing that there doesn't have to be a textbook way that you live your life or that you are a leader. You learn every day. And now in today's world, I think it's more important than ever that maybe we do things that go a little bit against the norm or are a little unusual, because I think that's the kind of change and thought process and mindset that we have to have.
Absolutely. There's no one right way to do things. And I think we need to hear that again and again and again, because there's can be so many pressures making us feel like there is one right way to do it. So I appreciate you ending us with that. And I just saw a question come in from Dawson. How, if this has come up for you, have you managed competing passions versus marketable skills? So maybe the balance of building out a career with things you're passionate about, or things that are quote unquote marketable and financially sound, if that's what, Dawson, am I understanding the question? Yes, okay.
I'm so grateful to be able to be doing work that I'm so passionate about. And I work with people in the community and just talk to friends that are I have to volunteer to do the work of my passions. And I love that you're able to do it. It was always hard for me to focus on the marketable skills versus what I was passionate about. And sometimes I feel like I prioritized building those marketable skills, but I always felt this conflict. I couldn't be my authentic self in focusing on building those skills. And on the teams that I build and support now and the people I supervise, I try and nurture and make space for their passions to align with the work and responsibilities they do. So but you asked, how have I managed competing? So I guess I just shared my thoughts on it, and how have I managed it? I disrupt. So one, I think this is a greater societal thing that will take so much structural change to change, but how I disrupt and try and dismantle this is connect my passions to the work that I'm doing, and allow people to, I think I just, by existing, now I think about it, I focus on my passions, and I do that in spaces. And in spaces where people focus on the marketable skills, I might not be received or seen as a fit. And I have to accept that. And I think one thing I'll say is people have different levels of privilege to do that. So I also want to acknowledge that I have the privilege to do that. I don't think I had the privilege to do that when I was getting my first or second job, or even my job after grad school. It was what paid the bills. I'll say whatever you want me to say, and I'll figure out how to do it when I get the job. So I just want to say that too. That comes with privilege.
Yeah, like to that point, like one of the reasons I took the job I did at the time was because I knew it was going to pay bills, and that to me was like the number one focus at that moment in my life, you know. And I also felt that I needed to have those marketable skills. You know, we live in a very capitalistic oriented society, and like I was like, I got to have something where I'm going to have stability. And so I did this job, but the thing I realized, even though I was learning a lot doing it, and I'm grateful for having had that opportunity, like I did realize that I really wasn't fulfilling the passion that I had. That I was doing it the best way that I could in that job and in that position, but that it really wasn't doing it for me. And you know, since then, like I'm stable, and I'm very happy that I can say that, at least financially. But I leaned more into my passion because I just felt that what really is going to make me happy in life isn't a big salary. It's not by having, you know, a lot of money. It's by doing my best to be comfortable, but doing what I'm passionate about, but what I know is good. And that to me was, I felt I have enough skills where I can work any industry, but as long as I have that, as long as I have that piece, then I'll be happy. And that to me was so important. And it's really hard, you know, especially nowadays. Things are really expensive. It's really tough to to navigate today's world. But if you're able to find ways in which you can do a job that you're passionate about, or do a job that you enjoy, and then whatever you're passionate about be something that you still really focus on in other ways, it's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really hope that this is the beginning of conversations like this that we're able to continue having. Would love to have both of you back at future MYL events. You both are such a wealth of knowledge, and just I feel uplifted, even though it's 9 o'clock at night. I would usually be sleepy. I just feel so uplifted right now and really rejuvenated. So thank you so much. It's so cool too, because like I was chatting Casey, being like, I haven't seen you since you were in high school, and it's so amazing to see you so grown up and like you're an adult doing things in the world. And same with Adrianna, we're pretty close in age, but just to see what an impact you're having in the community, I just get goosebumps seeing that. And so grateful for both of you for being here, for Christian, Olivia, and Dawson for joining as well. Y'all are getting a lot of love in the chat, so thank you so much. I'll let everyone get to bed. I know it's late, but again, I hope that these conversations continue. Yeah, just so grateful for y'all. Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom today.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thanks,
letting us
everyone.
have this opportunity.
This is a pleasure.